To put it another way, the world of money has been entirely transformed from its previous state. It has been stated that the BRICS alliance, which is comprised of South Africa, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, has successfully completed the most significant monetary reform of the 21st century. According to high-level leaks that have come from conversations that took place within the BRICS conference, the long-awaited BRICS basket currency is not only going to go online, but it will also be partially backed by XRP reserves alongside gold and strategic commodities. This information was obtained from the conversations that has taken place within the conference. An entirely new age in the world of global banking has begun as a direct consequence of this move, which is being referred to by some individuals who are knowledgeable about the subject as the official birth of digital gold. For a substantial amount of time, the BRICS nations have been working towards the goal of achieving independence from the Western-controlled financial system, which is dominated by the United States dollar and SWIFT. They are able to possibly have finally accomplished what they set out to do as a result of the introduction of XRP into their reserve mechanism. To phrase it another way, the decision was not arbitrarily created out of thin air. The alliance's economic think tanks and technological teams have been conducting tests on digital settlement layers over the course of several years in order to discover what could serve as a universal bridge between fiat currency, gold, and commodities. The goal of these experiments is to determine what could be the most effective solution. Gold is unable to give any of these characteristics, and the dollar has lost these characteristics as a result of its politicization. The most critical issues were speed, transparency, and global interoperability. Gold is unable to provide any of these things. It is true that the distributed ledger technology of XRP, which is capable of resolving transactions in a matter of seconds and with practically no energy cost at all, turned out to be the best solution. XRP is described as a liquidity synchronization instrument that possesses gold-backed features, as stated in a paper that was classified as having been leaked from the BRICS Monetary Council. This classification places it in the position of being both a reserve instrument and a payments asset at the same time. At this point, I shall offer the information that is the most astounding. BRICS appears to have assigned a value of $50,000 to each and every XRP currency that they have created. To tell you the truth, however, this is not merely a selection made at random from the moonshot number. Ultimately, the gold equivalent value model serves as the basis for everything that is being discussed. For the purpose of determining the liquidity requirements for international trade and the formation of commodity settlements among the member nations, the analysts who were participating in the BRICS currency endeavor were responsible for estimating these requirements. In order to match even half of the transactional liquidity of gold, according to their estimation, the circulating supply of XRP would need to acquire a valuation of at least $50,000 per unit. This would be the minimum amount required. The utilization of this valuation ensures that there is sufficient depth in global liquidity pools, which in turn makes it feasible to carry out trade settlements that are worth trillions of dollars without causing price volatility that is destabilizing. To put this into perspective, the total market capitalization of gold is currently hovering around $14 trillion. This puts this into perspective. At a price of $50,000, XRP would attain a market size comparable to that of other cryptocurrencies, quickly changing it from a speculative coin into a reserve asset of sovereign grade. This is an example of monetary engineering at the highest level of geopolitical sophistication. They are working toward tokenized reserves, in which XRP symbolizes a kind of digital gold that can be programmed and moved instantaneously. In essence, the leaders of the BRICS nations are reimagining what it means to have value in an economy that is computerized. Rather than holding gold in physical, they are moving toward digital gold. Significant implications will be brought about by this approach with regard to the current order of the global financial system. BRICS nations are able to skip Western-controlled infrastructure by incorporating XRP into their settlement network. This allows them to avoid Western-controlled infrastructure such as SWIFT, the SDR system of the International Monetary Fund, and the correspondent banking network of the Federal Reserve. The outcome of this is that an alternative financial universe is essentially launched, one in which transactions are confirmed on an open ledger rather than being routed through politically influenced middlemen. This is a significant step forward in the financial industry. A neutral digital settlement system that is independent of borders, sanctions, and currency wars is becoming increasingly widespread, and the adoption of XRP as the foundation of such a system is becoming increasingly common. in a manner that is comparable to the way in which nations tend to accumulate gold reserves. It has been hypothesized that central banks throughout the BRICS alliance are covertly collecting holdings of XRP. Gold is used to build credibility in traditional monetary systems, and XRP will be used to establish confidence in the new digital monetary standard. This is similar to how gold is used to validate conventional monetary systems. You ought to be aware that this is not about exchanging gold for other things. Increasing its level of sophistication is the major concern. On the other side, XRP acts as a liquidity bridge when it comes to facilitating the free movement of value between different networks, countries, and asset classes. Gold remains the solid foundation upon which tangible value is built. Already, analysts in the financial sector are referring to this as the definitive end of the era of the petrodollar. This is a significant event. Once the BRICS nations formally launch their commodity-backed digital currency, which would be priced in part by XRP reserves, it is likely that demand for U.S. treasuries may completely disappear. This would be a significant event. With the introduction of the new trade currency, it is now entirely feasible for countries to completely cease using the dollar. It is likely that this may result in a large rebalancing of global liquidity, in which governments will start diversifying their holdings into XRP in order to ensure that they have access to international settlement transactions. This is a possibility. Regarding the valuation of $50,000, I would ask that you would allow me to elucidate. The concept of a pricing objective is not what it appears to be. Rather, it is a requirement for the organizational structure of the company. Each token, well, it must exhibit a pretty large degree of liquidity in order for XRP to truly function as a basis for billions of dollars worth of international trade and reserves. This is a prerequisite for all XRP tokens. The velocity at which money is transferred is the foundation upon which this particular idea is built. A common rule of thumb is that the utility value of an object rises in direct proportion to the pace at which it circulates and the frequency with which it does so. In light of the fact that XRP is able to carry a significant amount of economic weight, you should be aware that its speed is unparalleled. As a matter of fact, this suggests that a price of $50,000 per coin would be deemed prudent after the process of the reserves that are backed by gold are fixed in voltage, whereas the reserves that are backed by XRP are able to move dynamically across the digital connections that connect each of the BRICS states. This includes oil contracts that are settled in XRP, the pricing of rare earth minerals in XRP, and interbank loans that are executed directly on the XRP ledger. Examples of these types of transactions are shown below. It would be the climax of the convergence of traditional commodities and digital assets, a combination of physical and digital wealth systems that has the potential to define the next century of economics. This would be the culmination of the convergence for traditional commodities. When the remark is made official, it is anticipated that lawmakers from Western countries will be caught aback by it. There is a risk that the United States of America and the European Union, both of which have been accustomed to fasting and the dollar for a considerable amount of time, may find themselves on the sidelines. The Bank for International Settlements, which has been undertaking tests with tokenized settlements as part of its Mariana project, is likely closely observing the inclusion of XRP by the BRICS states. There is a significant possibility that this is the case. Should the approach prove to be successful, it has the potential to spread across the entire world. According to market analysts, there will be a huge increase in the demand for liquidity from major institutions, sovereign wealth funds, and central banks once the BRICS nations issue their digital currency that is backed by XRP. This is something that is anticipated to occur following the debut of the digital currency. As a consequence of this happening, an unprecedented revaluation of XRP will take place, which will be prompted by the migration of trading volume worth trillions of dollars onto this new system. For those individuals who had previously believed XRP to be a speculative asset, the realization that retail investors have been holding a monetary base layer will come as a complete and utter surprise. For the purposes of the digital age, the BRICS nations have, in essence, established a new definition of gold. Since its start, XRP has evolved from a cryptocurrency to a worldwide liquidity tool. This shift occurred since his inception. It establishes the foundation for a financial world that is decentralized and multipolar, one that is no longer dependent on the dollar. The ramifications are tremendous, including a reorganization of the global economy,